Hi, Kat. How are you? Thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Hi, Casey. How are you?
I'm really good. I know you're very busy, so I really appreciate you taking the time today to come on to the show and talk to us. But first, how was Froctober? How did that end up for you?
Froctober was amazing. I ended up raising $2,750.
Oh,
So
wow.
amazed. Yeah, I'm so amazed at the generosity of my community and everyone who supported a really good cause.
Yeah, that is fantastic. And I know that we'll put some pictures up of your frocks when we do the live stream today. So we're pre-recording this because Kat's schedule is incredibly busy and she's been so generous to carve out some time to come and talk to us today because it is International Fraud Awareness Week. And I actually, believe it or not, had no idea that it was International Fraud Awareness Week until I saw Kat put it up on LinkedIn. So Kat, what are some of the key areas businesses find themselves vulnerable to when it comes to fraud?
I think a couple of really obvious ones are cybersecurity, but also essentially what's known as wire fraud. So it's the one where an email comes through looking like it's from a CEO or CFO of an organization, and a payment is made at their request or their instruction, and it actually goes to an offshore account later on and disappears. And there's a variation of that, which I find even braver of the fraudsters, which is to actually call up somebody in the finance department and say, this is so-and-so, your CFO, can you please transfer X? I'm in the middle of a deal and the payment gets put through because who challenges their boss, especially at 5 o'clock at the end of the workday, and they're in the rush. So those are the ones that we see that are somewhat different to your more traditional frauds and evolving and getting cleverer as time goes on too.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's some serious social engineering that they've been pulling on different companies and successfully sometimes. So thank you for sharing that. I also noticed on LinkedIn that you said that whistleblower hotlines were of particular interest to you. And do you think that these are helpful for businesses to detect fraud within their company?
It's a really interesting one, and there was a little bit of debate on the LinkedIn post. I think they are. So obviously, they are a great source of information, and you can report anonymously or leave your details, and an investigator can follow up on that. But it is one that you kind of go, well, it has to work. It has to be adequately promoted and educated across the organization. Otherwise, it just sits there. So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. Yeah.
And I noticed that you said that just because there's no calls coming through, it doesn't mean that there's no fraud. It might be a cultural issue within the company that might discourage people from coming forward. How do you think that might change? Do you think that there needs to be education outside of businesses as well about these things to encourage people to come forward?
Yeah, I think organizational culture is a huge part in fraud prevention and detection. If your staff feel empowered to actually report concerns or be able to have open conversations, it's not even potentially a formal report. It could be, hey, I saw this the other day. What do you think? I think that looks a bit odd. And being able to have those discussions is really key. And the whistleblower is just an additional layer of protection if those conversations, or if it's about their direct supervisor that they're reporting to, it just gives that extra avenue. But ultimately, it starts from that integrity culture.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. I'd actually never really thought about the hotlines before for whistleblowers, but obviously because I actually have this to put up. Sorry, I'll just grab it. I wanted to show, I'm not sure if you shared this or someone within our network shared this on LinkedIn. Oh, sorry, my computer's a bit slow today. The financial losses due to cybercrime in Australia. So that was like upwards of the billions of dollars that Combank and Telstra and Qantas personally turn over every year. It just shows the extent to how much we are affected by cybercrime at the moment, and how serious a topic this is, because I find that a lot of companies take the stance that it won't happen to them. And this is obviously why we need people like yourself out there saying, hey, it can happen to anyone. This is what happens. And having someone independent like you come in and look at it, you know what you're looking for, and you, as I said, you're independent of the situation, so you can detect these things much easier.
And I think there needs to be an acknowledgement that cybercrime and cybersecurity and fraud, it's an evolving space. A lot of organizations, I think, do a set and forget. We have a fraud and corruption control plan done on the shelf, and it's not revisited, it's not kept live. They're not looking at evolving scams or typologies of fraud or how others are being defrauded in their organization. So it's really important to recognize that it is an evolving space. And if you invent a control, somebody's going to try and invent a way to break it. So how do you keep one step ahead of that and keep that on top of mind as well?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really, really good point as well. Okay, so do you think Australian businesses are doing enough to lower the risk? I mean, I know you kind of just answered that there with it's an evolving thing, but do you think that a lot of people are looking at and revisiting their policies often?
I see it in different sectors. Certain sectors really take it a lot more seriously, and that's because it's a protection of reputation as well as financial resources. But some sectors, accept a degree of loss as part of, the normal part of business. But even then, there is still a reputational aspect, and it's that one big cybersecurity incident that could be a major issue or a major undoing. And it could stop your business for a period of time until you can get systems and things back up again, because you have the comfort that everything has been secured and the problem has been rectified.
Yeah. And on that, just with the risk to reputation as well, do you think some companies that are hit, do you think they maybe don't come forward about it as soon as they should because of the reputation issues that they could face?
Yeah, I've certainly had clients say, look, we had an issue, but it's so small. I don't want the hassle of having to go to court or pursuing or, criminal charges, etc. And I just don't need our brand dragged through court systems, etc. So, and they're reluctant to report. And it's a real shame, because then the perpetrator will go to their next job and probably try the same thing again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just another one of those things where people have to be able to be proactive and do something in order to stop the bad guys, I guess. So, yeah. And what is some kind of low-hanging fruit, so to speak, that businesses can do to mitigate some of their risk against cybercrime and fraud?
Yeah. So understanding your fraud risk is probably a really good place to start. Vetting your suppliers and making sure they're reputable and they're people that you should be doing business with, and they have their own controls, etc., in place, is really helpful, because sometimes you're not the weakest link as the person that you're dealing with. That leads to an issue. Also encourage you to build that culture of trust and integrity, and that openness to discuss things and raise concerns and issues. The talking about fraud does not encourage people to think about committing fraud, which can be a bit of a view with some management, but it's really important to have those open conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is perfect. And I thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I'm so happy that Froctober went so well for you, and you went over, you raised more than you first intended, didn't you, as well? So
yeah, my original goal was 600, and I think I lifted it 3 times. So really,
that's fantastic. So raising awareness in both sectors, ovarian cancer and fraud. Excellent. Well, thank you again, Kat, and I'm sure we will get you back onto the show again to keep picking your brain and keep everybody updated on this space. As you said, it's evolving. So, and the more that we speak to people like you, the more people coming through and studying risk and fraud can understand what they're up against, and also businesses that watch us can go, oh, maybe I should be doing something about that. So, yeah, again, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Casey.
Thanks, Kat.